Hi, this is Benny Rietveld, bass player for Santana, and you're watching forbassplayersonly.com.
Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching forbassplayersonly.com. We're coming to you backstage at, well, us old-timers call it Pine Knob. I think they call it something else, DTE Energy Music Theater or something like that. But more importantly is who we are with. And we are getting ready for the Doobie Brothers and Santana show. And we are sitting here with longtime Santana bass player, Mr. Benny Rietveld. Hey, Benny.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, fine. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
I think there's a rule that when you talk like that, you have to cup your ear with your hand like this. Yes, like the old time.
Kind of look at the camera and smirk a little.
Okay, you can look at me because we're just going to be two guys talking.
We're just two guys talking.
That's
right. Okay.
Regardless of what you've heard. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, with flowers and everything. Anyway, we did a phone interview. By golly, that was 2015, forever ago.
All the way back in 2015.
Yes.
God, I hardly remember anything. Yeah.
Just after the earth cooled, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. But it was a great interview. I listened to it today, as a matter of fact, and we were talking about your earliest days in Holland, none of which you remember because you left when you were maybe 2-3 years old, and you grew up on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. And you were telling us about your mentors and your piano teacher and your other piano teacher. And fast forward to, I guess, your post-high school years. And a friend said, hey, you got to come out to California. There's some cool music happening. Great story. Benny Rietveld, Rietveld. Check it out on forbassplayersonly.com. Just put that in the little search thing, and it'll pop right up. Great story, great interview. And as I mentioned, that was way back in 2015. So
I had the internet back then. I don't even remember.
Barely didn't have electricity, but they obviously had telephones because, like I said, it was a phone interview. So give us a couple of highlights of what's been happening since 2015. You've been doing this tour. You would mention some other possible side projects. Just generally speaking, Benny Rietveld, what's going on?
Absolutely nothing. No. I've been, it's been busy with this, with Santana and the Africa Speaks album and all that stuff lead up to that. And actually 4 years, let's see. So maybe also the Isley Brothers album, the Ronnie Isley, album. And
what about the Isley Brothers album?
Well, Carlos produced an album for Ronnie Isley, and we're involved in that. And then 4 years, was that, let's see, Santana 4? Were you around for that?
I want to ask you about that in Vegas, right?
Was that after the last interview? Okay. Yeah. So it's been a little busy, yeah.
But there was a whole alumni gathering for a run in Vegas, right? But were you part of that?
Yes. Well, it wasn't really, we did play in Vegas, but we recorded an album, they recorded an album, and I was lucky enough to be the bass player on it.
So that you can say we recorded an album.
Yes. Well, but Santana, it was basically the original Santana lineup, or a lot of them. Greg Raleigh, Neil Sean, Michael Shreve, Michael Carabello, and of course Carlos, and Neil Sean. It was really amazing. And me and Carl, the timbale player from the Santana band, we got to play, the bass and the timbale parts, and it was really pretty great, because it was like the original guys that, excuse me.
The original bass player would have been with David Brown?
Dave Brown, yes. Yeah. And so that was really a pretty fun thing, and we were really quite blessed to be kind of a fly on the wall, as it were, for the actual guys that were the architects of that music. So
how much homage did you pay to Dave Brown's original bass lines?
Well, I mean, I always do, and some of the songs, I try to stick as close as possible.
Like Oye Como Va, I mean, you don't want to mess with that line, for instance, right?
No, you can't. Otherwise, it's, not Oye Como Va. But Yeah, so for that, to prepare, I just listened even more. Just kind of immersed myself in really hearing, like approaches, and then but the idea wasn't to be a retro. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Do I have to be that close? uh, it's like, no. You ought to increase the input level just.
Okay.
No, but the idea wasn't really to be completely retro, but just to get a lot of the flavor of his particular approach, which is kind of like old school R&B plus a little bit of upright kind of technique and a lot of nice spaces, and things like that. So that was the approach. But we did want to, be part of the present also, so kind of just a blending of the two. And it was fun.
What about some of the solos that the guys played originally that they must have heard 1,000 times and performed 1,000 times? Did they use that as a starting point, or did they just blow like they would blow on a tune as if they were recording it for the first time?
It was all like a first time thing. I mean, there were definitely things were written, I mean, sort of like sketched out beforehand. And then we got into the studio, and it was really like, it was like the old and new. I mean, it was, what was the I hate to say the word old, but the original intent was just the nature of it being all feel, you know what I mean? Because that's what a lot of that music was, so, but feel with all of the nowness as well, so, and that's why that was a lot of fun. And those guys were amazing, so yeah.
I remember how excited everybody was when that was announced and when it was performed. You mentioned upright. Tell me about your gear. Basses, strings, amps.
I use all of those. No.
Hey, next question.
Yes, I do. It's still 4 years ago. It's still Music Man, Sterling Deluxe. I have a 4 and a 5, and amps. I don't know how it was last time, but I'm using a Grace M103 preamp into a QSC 3200 watt power amp. Into some cabinets that are custom made by our monitor engineer, Brian Montgomery. Yeah. He has a little company called Bad Monkey cabinets. Yeah. So
I remember you talking about that last time.
That's kind of the same, and it hasn't, it's been so far so good. It came from when we were louder on stage, so that hence the huge wattage. But now we don't really need that anymore, so it's great. I have a lot of headroom. How
about NS Design? You're a big fan of that company, right, and their products?
I use the CR series.
5-string, right?
Yep, yeah. And it's great. I mean, house sound guys always go like, wow, the sound. The sound is so stupidly full. It just fills up everything. So. That's been fun to use, as well. And every tour is different. Sometimes I don't use it for any of it. This tour we're not using it very much because the focus is on Supernatural and Woodstock. So, but a lot of tours, or in Vegas, I have it up there, and it's a great way to get the upright thing into a rock and roll setting, because as you know, it's a little difficult. I would love to play a real upright, but there's no way, with the sound levels and feedback, and so.
Yeah. Okay, and you mentioned that you normally would have more contact with a company, generally speaking, but nothing ever goes wrong with the NS Design, and so you have no reason to contact them.
No, it's been great. We have talked about possible design modifications, and they were talking about adding some things that we talked about. But but it's from a sonic and playability standpoint, it's it's pretty happening already. So yeah, I can't reinvent the wheel.
What's fascinating to me is I didn't know until about 3 years ago that Ned Steinberger is not any kind of musician whatsoever. He's a designer. He's an artist. He does not play music. He does not play the bass. He thinks of functionality, and somehow he's become very successful.
A lot of techs that I know are kind of like that. Some of the best techs I've had, they don't really play, but they just do one weird thing or two weird things, and suddenly it's like suddenly my bass is working like perfectly, and I don't know what they're doing. So I say, well, I don't care if you can't play at all. So, and a lot of them, don't really play that much. But I don't know. I guess it's better maybe to have the separation or something.
How about the rest of your gear? What kind of strings are you playing?
Still the Ernie balls, the medium slinkies, the pink package.
Okay.
And
Any effects?
I just got this Line 6 thing, the HX, the little cousin to their HDX big honkin' thing, and that has worked out pretty well so far. I really like that. So that's what I've been using primarily for the last month or two.
Okay. I want to ask you about bass technique for a minute. We've been known at ForBassPlayersOnly.com for the last 10 years or so as the resource for bass player interviews. We've had a bass player interview every single week since June of 2009.
Wow, congratulations. That's great.
A lot of interviews. And lately, we have migrated over all the instructional content from my bass instruction site, formerly known as johnliebman.com. Now that's part of ForBassPlayersOnly.com, and we're getting in some other faculty. Joe Santerre does a whole 6-string course. What I'm getting at is more and more people are learning bass online right here at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. And I wanted to take this opportunity just to talk to you. A lot of the people that sign up for our lessons are men in their 50s, maybe 60s, maybe retired, or they have more time. They've always wanted to do this. And I just like to ask what kind of wisdom or what kind of advice you can impart to these people about what do you need to, a lot of people would take a lot for granted in playing the bass, and what should they be thinking about, and what should we not be taking for granted? And generally speaking, what advice would you have for somebody who wants to learn to play the bass?
Well, I would say that if you need constant ego gratification, then it's the wrong instrument for you, because you're not going to get that a lot. It's not. It's an incredibly important and a huge responsibility in any band situation. I mean, it's part of what, I hate to say it, but makes a lot of things sound good.
Why do you hate to say it? They know that.
No, because it sounds like a slight to the other instruments. Everyone plays their part. I mean, we still sound stupid playing up there by ourselves. For a whole night as well. So. But it's one of those instruments where it's a background thing, primarily, and a lot of we have to remember that a lot of it isn't heard, it's felt, so that's why it's so important, and it's really, you've got to be really responsible. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. But it's true. We're like Spider-Man, but no. But it's a very, very vital function of music. It's the pulse. It's the earthing, the grounding of it. Because the lyrics and melodies, fill our hearts and our heads. But without that grounding, there's no way to get it into people's soul. So we have to be there to provide that pulse, primarily, the primary function. And soloing is great, and all that other stuff is awesome too, but that's the primary function of the bass, is to ground everyone, so that other people can do their thing, and people can receive it. And with most kinds of music, the bass is about dancing. we, whether people know it or not, are generally, we're kind of in control of making people dance or not, you know. And with most kinds of music, if they're not just at least moving or tapping their, you know, then you're not doing a good job, you know. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of music, right? There's, you know, very intellectual music and this and that, but a lot of forms of pop and, you know, R&B influenced and rock. It's about this pulse, and you got to make people dance, and that's what a large part of our function is.
As excited as I have been about bass for the last 40 years, you've just got me more excited.
Right?
I love it.
I mean, if I don't see people dancing, you know, then I feel like I'm not. Oh, okay, I'm gonna do, you know, check myself, because, you know, I mean, it could be other things too, but, you know, there's a thing to it, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, and then there's great joy when you see them going, you know,
Yes.
just losing themselves, because you know that the bass is the sort of like the delivery system, if you will, for all the other stuff, all the ideas and in the songs and all the messages and all that stuff. And it'll go by a lot of people, but if, you know, you open their souls in this other subconscious way, then they're way more apt to receive stuff like that, you know. I mean, think of Bob Marley. I mean, we're just listening to it on the bus, and that,
Family Man.
yeah, I mean, you know, like, that message reached millions and millions and millions of people, and Family Man was a large part of why it got to so many people, you know. So,
And we're sitting here probably about 25, 30 miles from where James Jamerson made all that Motown history.
and,
So
you know, the list goes on and on. So, yeah, absolutely. You just pick apart pretty much any kind of music that lasts, you know, that has lasted. You're going to find that the bass is at the heart of it, you know. So,
what about the future? You had talked about some other projects and some producing you'd like to do. You mentioned that, I think you said you got together with some of your old high school buddies that you hadn't seen in a long time, and you recorded something, and then you said you'd like to produce something, music, in a way that people aren't used to hearing it. And you mentioned Katy Perry and some other people like that. Well,
that was funny. But, I mean, I do like, I have a wide, my random playlist is like shocks a lot of people, but no, that Topaz project was really fun. Yeah, those are a bunch of high school buddies. We had like this fusion band in Hawaii back when we were in high school, and it was a great fun. And they're all like still playing music, and they're all still like great, you know. And then I also produced this album, artist called Allison Yaffe, and she's like this guitar player singer who's like this amalgam of Joni Mitchell and Grant Green, and just like this, you know, really, it's part of this new music that's coming out that I really love, that I'm hearing. So because there's so much cool new music out there like that, like Allison and stuff, one of my pet projects is to develop that I'm working on at this moment. I can't talk too much about it, but it's a music festival in an heretofore undisclosed location. But it's primarily, it's based on the idea that if you have too much really dull music, then it makes for a dull society. So I believe that there should be more other kinds of music as well, that music that challenges people on a subconscious level, not incredibly hard, you know, sophisticated music, you know, I mean, but just stuff that has something different than the same four or five note melodies and the same chord progressions that we've been hearing and the same beats over and over, you know, over again. I mean, I love all that stuff too, but there should be a little bit more of a balance, like there used to be when we seemed to have a kind of a healthier society a little bit. There was a lot more variation in music, you know, in popular music. And I just want to emphasize some other people that don't get, you know, like their due these days. You know, there's a lot of really cool bands and musicians out there, and so that's what this festival is about.
Well, we can't wait to hear more about it as
Yes,
soon
we
as
will.
you're in a position to disclose more
Yes.
information. Let me ask you one more question, Benny.
Yes.
What would you be if you weren't a bass player? Something outside of music.
Chef.
Okay, because I did ask you that last time, and I was just curious what answer you would give me this time, if it would be the same or if, well, first you said a bum. and I do get answers like that a
Right,
lot, but then
I guess that's a really tough question.
well, you said I like to I like to travel. I like to drive. So, but then you got a little more serious, and you said a truck driver.
Well, that's another bass function. That's kind of like, I think at the time I was using bus or truck driver as an analogy to, like where bass players are driving the bus, and we're just out of everybody's way, but we take people there, so maybe that's probably why. Some garbage like that. I don't know.
So you could be a truck driving chef who is also a bum.
Most no. Well, I think chef, because music feeds our souls, and so does food. And I think there's a direct correlation between food and music. I mean, every chef, that if you don't love it, it's going to taste awful. If you don't love what you're playing, it's going to sound awful. And every great chef that I know, their food tastes, they love it. It's a passion for them, and they're always playing great music in the kitchen. By the way, So yeah, that's probably why I just said chef.
There are a lot of analogies you can make with
Oh, yeah.
seasonings and
Sure.
faster, slower, sweetening. I don't know. All right. Well, Benny, it is so great sitting down with you after all these years.
Yeah, 4 years.
And seriously, we'd like to hear more about the festival and anything else you can tell us. So maybe we'll do a follow-up interview in the foreseeable future, the near future. In the
Before our technology changes again.
well, that's happening pretty fast, so who knows? But anyway, thank you so much for sitting down with us for a few minutes, and we're looking forward to the show. And you told me before, you've been with Santana, what would you say, 29 years?
Yep.
20?
Yeah, I started in 1990.
Wow, that was 29 years ago. Wow. Yeah, well.
So when you say 4 years ago, I'm like, come on, dude.
Yes. And I've interviewed your predecessor, I think, about 3 times, Alfonso Johnson.
Yeah.
I saw him with Santana on that dubious night when Jocko jumped up on the stage in Fort Lauderdale, and we all know what happened later that night. But let's end on an up note. We're looking forward to the show, and the Doobie Brothers are the opening act. And
Doobie Brothers are amazing. It's really this is a cool show. It's great. Yeah.
all right. On location backstage at the DTE Music Energy Theater, formerly known as
Pine Knob.
Pine Knob, with our good friend Benny Rietveld. I'm John Liebman. You're watching the essential site for exclusive one-on-one bass player interviews and everything bass, and now more and more people's favorite site for learning bass online, for bassplayers only.com. I'm John Liebman. Let's play bass.